this was so last minute thrown together, and then Rob scheduled it for the wrong time.
Feels like the good old days of when we were unprofessional.
This was such a so Robert tweeted something yesterday. He tweeted out the Brian Holdsworth link, and I was like, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, are you free? Because I typically work on a Saturday and I don't have work this Saturday. So I figured let's hang out and have a chat. And Robert was available. So we've spoken to Robert before. Robert, how you been, man?
I'm doing very well. As I said, I need a big bowl of popcorn to follow everything that's going. I know that sounds terrible, but it's like, guys, you couldn't plan this or program this or script it. It's just
it has been an exciting couple of weeks, I would say. So between the Strickland stuff, then the Lofton drama, and then we had our show, and in our show, it was what an interesting show, because the most feedback I'm getting is that people felt almost like they were in some kind of a VIP lounge with all the Catholic podcasters in the chat. And it was such an interesting dynamic to have Matt Fradd, Brian Holdsworth, Kennedy Hall, Mike Lewis.
Mike Lewis cracking jokes with Kennedy Hall laughing at them like, what the heck is going on here?
I think it kind of showed that despite our differences, especially between Kennedy and Mike Lewis, right? Like those two guys are so far apart, but despite our differences, we're all still Catholic. We all still care about the same things, and we need to maybe tone things down a little bit the way we handle things.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel that I am friends with Mike Lewis, and do you know what? Once I took a stance on a subject once that was, we were just at argument's length, Mike and myself, about something that he had published, and I viciously attacked him over something, and then I had to admit I'm wrong, and I actually was wrong, and it was like humble pie, and I had to write an email to Mike and said, Mike, I am sorry, you were right, I was wrong. Now that doesn't mean I agree with everything that he said, but God sometimes he comes in and says, he humbles us and said, you know what, Robert, you were wrong. And we can take it two ways. We can just be prideful and go about and ignore, or we can actually say, I was wrong. And I suppose Catholicism is a lifetime of discovery and education and prayer and humility, because am I right? Do I have to study more? Do I have to pray more? Do I have to talk more? So that's why, we're Catholic. We're Catholic, and we'll have a discussion and we'll have a debate, but we've all got one destination, and I have to pray that Mike Lewis and myself and everybody else and all you guys, we're all going to get to heaven. We have to have that faith, that sure hope that we all make it there and help each other to get there. And that's the beauty of Catholicism. It's it's a team effort in the sense that of evangelization. So, but
you know what it is? We see all these tribalistic camps popping up, but you and I were saying in the green room, I watch pretty much everybody, right? So I was telling you, I'm like, oh, I love this video that you did. I love this video that you did. But you were telling me you read pretty much, you keep up with most of the blogs, and you speak 3 different languages. And the idea is, I think when people get caught up in a camp, say you're a Kennedy Hall fan, you think you have to agree with every single thing Kennedy says. And then if somebody else disagrees, you're not allowed to be a fan of that part. Where I watch everybody, and I find that everybody's saying pretty similar things. They might disagree on one slight, Kennedy's very pro SSPX, and you might find somebody that's not so pro SSPX. But when it comes down to the faith itself, they both believe the Orthodox faith, and they're disagreeing about this strange liturgical thing or canonical status. It doesn't separate you as brothers. So I don't think that there should ever be these tribes, and I think that we should all be coming together to have conversations.
We definitely do, and this is what we need to drive home. If we drive each other into a camp, because I've seen it in the traditional world. In Ireland, you had the SSPX in Ireland. They were the only show in town as far as traditional Latin Mass for a while. And all of a sudden, a disagreement broke out between the SSPX, and Bishop Williamson went one way and the rest went the other. And in Ireland, Bishop Williamson came in and he ordained one of the priests here in Ireland a bishop. Bishop Father Bellini. And now you have one side of traditional faith that literally won't talk to the other, or there's conflict. And I'm saying, gosh, God, if you only remained, if you could only agree among yourselves, you would be able to dialogue better about what you actually believe in. But now that one side won't talk to the other, it doesn't.
It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking, and you see this going out in the church. We see this expanding out in the church. We have to talk together, because at the end of the day, we have one mission. We have to bring everybody to heaven.
Yeah.
You might look at McCarrick and hate him and what he's done, but if you're really Catholic, and this is going to challenge people, we have to pray that he will be with us. We'll have beatific vision in heaven. That's a big statement. Wow, Robert, that's too much. Yeah, I'd pray but do you want me to pray for these guys? That's too much for me. But that's what Christ calls us to do. It's the higher calling.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, you pray your enemies have a repentant heart at the end of their life. It's the hallmark of being a Christian, to love your enemies. It's a tough one. I mean, Christ, as he's being crucified, says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I mean, people are capable of some pretty evil stuff. And if Christ can forgive the people that actually did that to him, how can we not forgive someone who has a disagreement on a canonical status of a certain priestly fraternity? It's pretty crazy. I was curious what it looks like from Ireland to see the American church, because we hear all the time that, especially from Francis will make comments, or the Vatican will make comments, that this is a very American problem,
Yeah.
And I mean, I watch Catholic Unscripted, and they're in the UK. I watch you, and you're in Ireland, and you guys seem to have very similar sentiments to what we feel over here. It doesn't feel like a uniquely American problem, maybe a uniquely English-speaking problem, because I don't speak other languages. I know you do, but do you feel that the Catholics that you associate with in Ireland are feeling similar sentiments, or are you the wild card in Ireland?
Okay, to start off with, I never intended to be a Catholic blogger, so it wasn't like, oh, this is what I'm going to set up. I just voiced frustration one day on camera, and people started listening to me. I was just saying, couldn't we do more to reverence the Eucharist? Because we were treating it like toxic waste. I put one video up, and I said this bishop was giving the Eucharist through a screen. He was masked up and sanitized everything, and I said, are we so afraid of our Lord that we're literally treating him like toxic waste, the way we and it just exploded. Thousands of people contacted me. You're so right. You're voicing it, and that kind of stood back. And then I just kept going, and I never thought I'd be in this space, because I had walked away from the church. I work in a secular. I work in a large multinational company involved in supply chain and SAP systems support and all of this customer engagement. And I really didn't have any clue. Didn't really want to get involved in the church politics, but at the end of the day, when you reach a certain state of life, you said, we have to stand up and just say, guys, get your act together.
Yeah.
Come on. We're absolutely miserably failing the next generation. And so you can see this happening with different bloggers. Some will accuse us of being grafters. Taylor Marshall is the type typical grafter. He'll say anything to get clicks. But we are failing to preach the gospel to the next generation. I mean, and I think everybody can agree in this. We've gone from one very overly rigid, hell, fire and brimstone preaching, to so indulgent now that it's, if you don't want, guys, come on. And in the midst of this, look what's happening.
So now in Ireland, do you guys have? Do you find that most of your audience is Irish, or I would imagine most of your audience is American, right?
It's American would be 30%. So it's Irish. Yeah. I have a lot of in Asia. I was walking through a shopping center in Singapore a couple of months ago, and a couple came up to me and said, Robert, We follow on YouTube. And then people were writing to me in Singapore, said, we saw you at mass, but we didn't want to approach you because you were praying. And I said, oh, you could just come up and introduce.
Yeah.
So I've had this, I've been in France working, and priests have reached out to me and laity have reached out to me. Oh, we see you're in France. Can we meet up with you? So it's, no, 30% would be American. I'm Canadian. I'm Irish, so I'd have a following in Canada, and obviously in the English-speaking world. And then I've done some videos in Spanish and Italian. So that's kind of the demographic. It's very spread out across the world.
Yeah, that's a pretty diverse. I would say that's a pretty diverse audience. I think we have a decent following in Australia. I catch so many Australian people watch us. It's pretty awesome when you have people in Australia who they're like a full day ahead of us at the time zones that are so engaged in the Catholic faith, because I know it's rough in Australia to find tradition, especially. But yeah, I mean, you were telling me in the green room that oh man, it's so funny. We were talking in the green room. We're like, we're going to wind up bringing all this stuff up again. How do we not have this? So you speak 3 different languages. So you read a lot of Spanish blogs and things like that.
Yeah.
So the idea that this is a uniquely American podcaster phenomenon is kind of crazy. You were saying that there's plenty of Spanish blogs that seem to echo a lot of the things we're seeing in America, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big blogger in Argentina, Father Ravasi, que no te la cuentan, and he shared Bishop Strickland's Spanish video, because Bishop Strickland did this big call. He shared, and Bishop Strickland speaks Spanish, and he did this video in Spanish. Bishop Strickland's Spanish video got more views, you can go and look at this, than the English-speaking video. That goes to show his reach. And I would say the backlash from Rome came from the fact that you now have an American bishop speaking into Spanish-speaking world, and you can debate whether what we did was right or wrong, but Bishop Strickland has 20 seminarians in his tiny diocese. I think 120,000 people, right? Tiny.
It's a small little.
Yeah, fourth. He's the 4th bishop of that diocese. We have 4.5 million Catholics in Ireland. Okay, 4.5 million on this island. 26 dioceses on this island, and we have the same number of seminarians in our only last remaining national seminary as the Diocese of Tyler.
Wow.
Think about that. Now, if we had Bishop Strickland over here in Ireland, we might have a couple of hundred seminarians in our seminary.
That's a great point, right? I mean, if you
true.
even have one, oh man, it's so heartbreaking. That is actually really heartbreaking that they don't see that.
I think they do see that, and I think that's part of the reasoning, actually.
Because it's the type of seminarian that he's attracting that they're worried about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was working in France 6 weeks ago in a diocese of Fréjus Toulon, where there's a bishop called Bishop Dominic Ray, and he's been sanctioned by the Vatican not to ordain men. So I think he has 12. I could be mistaken, but I think there's 12 men that have done their preparation and are waiting to be ordained, and they're good men.
Yeah,
they are good men.
So Tom and I are in the same diocese. He says we have 3. Now I'm in the 2nd largest diocese in the country. So Rob, should look up Rockville Center. How many Catholics are in Rockville Center? To have 3 seminarians, that we should probably have like 1.5 million Catholics or something.
Yeah,
I would imagine. I mean, it just goes to show you.
Yeah, but you're up near New York area, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's liberal. I mean, God, come on.
So Rockville Center is the 6th largest Catholic diocese in the United States. And this was 2005, so it's a little out of date. But in 2005, it served 1.5 million Catholics in 134 parishes.
Okay, so now, Robert, you were saying liberal New York, but that's not really true for Long Island. So I live on Long Island, and it's not very liberal. It's really not. We're very conservative, but what does that mean when you're talking about Catholicism? Because people confuse the political with with the religious. So my father is one of the most conservative political guys I've ever known, but he's also one of the most liberal. I mean, he's very liberal in his liturgy, and he's also very liberal in his religion, and to the point where now he doesn't even go to mass anymore. So it's a hard thing to really grasp. I remember some of the conversations I had with my dad. Dad, how can you be so conservative in your politics and so liberal in your religion? I just don't get it. You know, I tried to bring him maybe to a traditional mass. He won't even go. He won't have it. Nothing. So it's, you know, when you're looking at the faith, it really does come. I don't care where you are. You could be in the most liberal place on earth. If your parents instill in you, or if you have a deep conversion of heart from something you're exposed to, you're going to become a conservative when it comes to your faith, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't hear 3 seminarians and 1.5 million Catholics. My diocese has 40,000 Catholics. We have 11 seminarians.
I suppose the real barometer of a healthy Catholic diocese is how many people we get to heaven, and we'll never really know that.
That's true.
Yeah. But then it's hard to know what barometer to measure. Is it mass attendance? Is it funds? Is it money? And I think the church now, the barometer that's really pinching them is money. You know, the fact that, you know, we don't have enough income to ensure our churches, to heat our churches, to maintain our churches. It is going in that direction, and we see that in Ireland. I mean, vocational crisis. It is. I mean, the writing is on the wall, you know, I think we could be doing. We could actually drive a different conversation on this. And Strickland, for whatever reason, he is the #1 Catholic bishop worldwide that has hit new in headlines, and the conversation is out there. You know, we have all these liberal bishops in Germany. We had that bishop that was invited to the synod, not a single seminarian in his diocese, not a single. I mean, and we have a country that 500,000 Catholics fill in a form, because you have to formally go and say, I'm not a Catholic anymore. I'm not paying any taxes to the Catholic Church. I've renounced my Catholic affiliation. Please take me off your mailing list. They do that. Guys, really, where are we going this in the future? And I wish the Vatican would lend Joseph Strickland to Ireland for...
Yeah, well, what I'll say is this. So my bishop, look, my bishop, I don't want to, oh man, I wish I didn't say what diocese I'm in, because I don't want to cause any trouble.
You're going to get us in trouble, Ant.
My bishop is neither, I mean, I won't even say anything negative about him. I don't even know. I never hear anything from the guy. He's just non-existent. You know what I mean? He's not a good guy or a bad guy. He kind of just, he does. I think he's one of those guys. I mean, he's in such a big diocese, and he just wants to kind of keep his head down. And I don't blame him for that. I mean, especially under Francis, you have to be careful, because if you stick your head up a little too much for tradition, you're gonna. Because I'll follow him on Twitter, and he says he'll quote Benedict XVI all the time. He'll quote some things from that I would think this current pontificate would find a little controversial. So it's he allows our community to exist, our diocesan traditional community to exist, and he doesn't. I don't want to say too much, because I don't want to get him in trouble. I kind of don't know what a bishop is to do in this arena, because you look at a guy like Strickland, who has this tiny little diocese.
Yeah.
And look, they made the decision to sack him, I think, the day he wrote that tweet that said, it was in response to Patrick Coffin. It was Patrick Coffin's the Hope is Fuel conference, and he said, I disagree with Patrick Coffin on the papacy, but I also I disagree with Pope Francis's program to undermine the faith. That was like earth-shattering to everyone, and they just made that decision. That's when he got the apostolic visitation. That's when they just, they go through and they try to find any reason they can to get rid of this guy, and in the end, none of those reasons mattered. It just came down to Francis saying, you're out.
Yeah, but
which
they
is
made
very
a big
unusual.
But they've made a big mistake. I mean, they've been so indulgent with other bishops, and for example, with the Archbishop Lefebrve, they gave him time and space for dialogue. They presented agreements with him. They said, "Do you believe in this?" They sat down and spoke to them. They didn't do that with Bishop Strickland. They said, "Okay, you made this. What do you believe? Do you believe or not?" And they didn't give him time to clarify. And when he did clarify, it's not what people have been making out. Now, he himself admits he made mistakes, but the ordinary Joe So Catholic is saying, okay, he's made these mistakes. Has he been sleeping with seminarians? Has he been abusing minors? Has he been covering up pedophile priests? Has he been moving priests around his diocese? Does he have a mistress? Does he have children? Because there are bishops in communion with the Pope who have mistresses and have children. The Vatican knows this, and they say nothing. We know
That's
this.
crazy.
I mean,
That's the truth.
there's a bishop just reincarnated Rupnik in June.
Wait, even all right, Rob, because that's the most extreme example, right? Like all right, that's the most extreme example. But think about what Robert's saying. There are priests, there are bishops who actually have
Nighty Night Tobin.
Scandal upon scandal on them, and it's as if I mean, Francis just praised the guy the other day who covered up abuse as he's simultaneously getting rid of Strickland. It is so, and that's why I think I got so upset at the Lofton issue, because Lofton's coming out and laying the groundwork for seating everybody to handle this Strickland dismissal as if as if the only sin in the church these days is to criticize the Pope or to criticize the way the direction the church is heading in. And I think that so many people are just so heartbroken over the actual direction of the church. And what I've really noticed is that I don't care what flavor of Catholicism you ascribe to. I don't care if you're SSPX, you're traditional Latin Mass, if you're just an Orthodox Catholic, if you're a charismatic Catholic with a deep, because people can say things about the charismatic movement. Those people love Jesus more than anybody I've ever seen, man. They adore our Lord, right? And all of us all have one thing in common. We're all very uneasy about the way things are going right now.
Yeah, but the thing about the charismatic movement, and I don't think people have noticed, like Lofton picked up on Ralph Martin. He did a video against Ralph Martin. Ralph Martin, I mean, if you're looking at his videos, I mean, this guy is more and more is a traditional Catholic. You know, you could say charismatic, and you're listening to Ralph Martin. And I said, Ralph Martin is a traditional Catholic. I mean, he wrote the book, The Fulfillment of All Desire. And
It's a great book.
I mean, every Catholic, I said, this is more traditional than I mean, it is.
But I would say charismatic Catholics have always been traditional in their faith. It's their liturgy that they're not traditional in, right?
But I've been to charismatic masses, and I just think it's very, I mean, here in Ireland, I'm just talking about the charismatic movement here in Ireland, the priests that I know that are part of it. And they just say the Novus Ordo end to end, as they say the black, do the red. They do the guitar stuff and the singing at the beginning, which is not. I mean, I'm not into that. I don't like that. But I'm not going. The mass is the mass, and then at the end they just adoration and simple things. So, and their homilies like are really, you know, really powerful homilies. Come on. You know, and what are the fruits that I'm seeing from that? Okay, you're going to confession, you're going to adoration, you're doing ministry, you're doing missionary work, you know, a change of life. You know, it's not sitting back. I mean,
listen, okay, so Robert, let me give you a little because I've seen one of your videos that'll actually bring up an interesting point. So growing up, my mom always had a deep faith. My father didn't. My mom, it's such a long story, and I've told it before, but my mom somehow gets my father to agree to go to Medjugorje.
Okay.
So my dad was like a militant atheist before this trip. He comes back from this trip on fire for God, man. When I tell you, playing guitar in the music ministry at church, and my parents are very involved in the charismatic renewal growing up, and you know, just to see my father transform like that. My mom stops using birth control at that point because that's the point I'm trying to get at, is that the charismatic movement, while I was never a fan of the liturgical things, because my mom would make me go to life teen masses and things like that. I was never a fan of that stuff, but I've never met a group of people more on fire for God who were very adamant that you needed to ascribe faithfully to the moral precepts of the church. I mean, they were no birth control, no sex outside of marriage. I mean, everything you would think a traditional Catholic believes is just their liturgy and their music that would be different, you know? So that, like you said, when he goes after Ralph Martin, I don't think he realizes how faithful Ralph Martin is. I mean, yes, I'm sure he did actually realize that, but how many people adore Ralph Martin and the blowback that would come from that? Because I love Ralph Martin. I'm sitting and watching him have a conversation with Matt Fradd. You won't find something I disagree with from the guy, you know?
And the thing is, what Lofton may fail to understand is Ralph Martin has spent a lifetime studying and meditating on this, and it's not just an off the cuff remark. He's saying, look, this is what he has studied over the course of. I mean, and he's met John Paul II and Benedict and all this, and he's been promoted and studied this. It's not like he's a liberal Catholic. He said, look, this is what we have always believed, and now there is confusion, and people are and I don't think Lofton understands that. I mean, I would be very hesitant in criticizing major Catholic figures, and I tentatively did it with Bishop Schneider, but I did it with very considered, just on certain areas. But I wasn't, and I said I'm not an expert, but I just said, look, I just found some of the things that he wrote confusing, but I do praise his work. And look, we just have to come together and just be brothers in Christ. We have one mission, and we have to
listen. I've seen you have disagreements with even Kennedy Hall, right? But it's a tweet. It's, hey, Kennedy, I don't understand this, and with Tim Gordon, hey, I don't understand. What are you getting at with this? It's not a series of videos where it's one after the other. And I don't think there's an issue with having disagreements. You should be able to have healthy disagreements where, hey, I want to challenge you on something that I saw you say that I'm not so sure about. Look, I will say this. I understand the temptation to do response videos because we've never gotten more interaction than we did from our Lofton response video ever. I mean, when I tell you my notifications on comments for that video, every time I swipe down, I look up and we got 5 new subscribers on the channel. It's a very tempting thing to do response videos because your channel will grow and your video is going to get some traction. But at the same time, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd be able to sleep at night because I want to build something. I don't want to tear things down. And I feel like doing response videos all the time is kind of just tearing others down and it's not building something. And I hope Michael comes around back to having the conversation with all of us.
Yeah. I mean, we do have to be careful because then we just become polarizing, and it's very easy to do a video that gets the clicks, but does it nourish it? And I fall into this trap. There's some videos that I do a lot of preparation and I do a lot of study and I've scripted it out and said, I've put my heart and soul into this and I hope it reaches a soul, and it gets 200 views and I've spent 8 hours on it. And there's other videos I do 10 minutes and I do a rant and it gets 120,000 views.
Crazy.
Say, oh God, what did I do here? What did I do here? I did, but like, and that's where I'd love people to come to know the person that we're all debating about, which is our Lord Jesus Christ, his message, his church, his gospel, the teachings that he left us, how it's moving through the magisterium. I'd love people to come to know him. And I think the greatest messages I get are people saying, I'm not Catholic and I've listened to you and I want to become Catholic. And
those are the best.
Oh, it's that for me is, look, or people that are suicidal and that are depressed and say, look, I've listened to your video and you've helped me and I've gone to church or I've gone to confession or I've done this. And I said, well, thanks. I mean, that's the Holy Spirit. That's God working through us. I didn't do that. Our Lord did that, And,
it's always beautiful. I mean, if you get a comment that says, it's the first time you guys, something you guys said led me to go back to confession after a decade or something, you're like, wait, what the heck? We're just over here goofing around. I don't know what the heck we could have said, but that is God doing that, it's a wild thing what God will use to spark something in somebody's heart. And it's always touching when you are somehow a part of that.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what we really should be doing. Just what is the mission of what we're doing as Catholic bloggers? We have to help people know, love, and encounter Christ in the Eucharist, in sacred scripture, in our communities, and bring them in. I've been blessed. I've a large group of men, and we meet ever so often, and we are all different walks of life and different backgrounds, and we have different discussions, and I suppose I have different prayer groups, and in Ireland, I know people in traditional side and the charismatic side and the ordinary side, and you want to build that up, and give them the good news. It can transform your life, and that's what really was driving me on more in Ireland than anything else. And we'll see what God uses this for. But the Medjugorje,
that's what I wanted. That's what I was just going to say, because I saw you put out a video saying I was wrong about Medjugorje. So you actually had gone to Medjugorje, right?
Okay, well, when me and Medjugorje, in 1991, I was in the Legionaries of Christ. In 1991, the Franciscans from Međugorje, they came to our seminary in northern Italy. They were passing, and they were giving us a talk about Međugorje, which was a bit strange because in our Legionaries of Christ, we generally don't branch into apparitions or anything like this. But they did. They were just passing. They were looking for a place to stay, and they gave us a talk in Međugorje. And then afterwards, we found out that some of these guys, they had double lives. They had children, or they had, And I just said, I'm never getting involved in that bloody Međugorje. Sorry, I'm just saying at the time, this was my thinking. I'm not going to get involved in this. Afterward, the Legionaries of Christ and all this, I said, look, it's just another scam. It's just another scam in the church, just another money-making opportunity. And, off you go, and we'll see how it progresses. And it was only when my son got run over by a car last year, and the morning before he was ran over, somebody gave me this rosary from Međugorje. So it was, we were going to a prayer group, and he handed me this rosary. He said, I was in Međugorje, and here's a rosary. And then my son got knocked over, and my wife was saying, he really got knocked over by a car, like really out walking, over the bonnet, breaks the windscreen and everything. Off to the hospital, scan this, scan that, up, down, and nothing there, completely fine. And my wife was saying, it's a miracle, nothing happened. And I just said, well, do you know what? I've gotten a rosary from Međugorje today, and I'm going to, a friend had been asking me to go to Međugorje. He's a good friend of mine. And I said, look, I'll go to Međugorje with him, and I'll have some crack with him. The Irish sense of the crack, some fun.
I was going to say, wait, what?
the Irish banter. We'll go to mass and have a beer afterwards. The Irish sense of the world.
Man, this dream got interesting fast.
I wasn't going to Međugorje for any other reason but to go to, I'll have prayer and stuff like that. And I had been in contact with Father Leon Pereira. He's the English-speaking Dominican that works in Međugorje. So he just kind of filled me in on some of the controversial stuff in there, and how to understand, once Our Lady supposedly said that all religions are equal, and he said, well, that's not what she said. That's what, and he kind of made me understand, how the children were interpreting, because they live in a very multi-ethnical area. And it was just, okay, they're how you interpret this, because some people ran off with that quote as if, she's speaking heresy. And he said, when she didn't actually say that. So you had to put it in context. So went out to Međugorje, and the first thing I remember that evening, I arrived to Međugorje, it was a Wednesday evening, and I walked to where they were having the big mass outside in the evening. And all I could see across the whole town were these words, Hoc est enim corpus meum quod pro vobis tradetur, because they were saying the mass, but they were saying the consecration in Latin, which is the universal language of the church. And I said, I didn't expect this. Where did this appear out of? And I'll say it privately, guys, and I've spoken to other people, but I went up Cross Mountain. This is the big mountain. There's a cross there. And Our Lady said to me, go back to Ireland and organize adoration in Derry, a city in Ireland. I said, do you know what? This is how do I digest this? And I went down the mountain, and I met some people from Derry, and I said to them, do you know what's happened to me in the mountain is this? And the man says, that's from God. We need to do this. And he said to me, well, a lady paid for us to come to Međugorje, and they said, we need to go to Međugorje because there's a man whose son has been knocked down by a car that's in Međugorje. I said, what? 11 men had their whole trip paid to come out to Međugorje to supposedly
from
be
Derry.
From Derry.
So you
Jim,
go up and God puts on your heart that you have to organize
Yeah.
adoration
Yeah.
in Derry, and then 11 men say somebody paid for us to come to Međugorje to meet a man whose son got hit by a car.
Yeah, and actually a month before, I was with a Catholic author, Roger Buck, and he said to me, Robert, you should go up to Derry and meet these men. You know, they're Knights of the Eucharist. You're in, because they're Knights of the Blessed Eucharist. Like, so they wear this big scapular,
Mm-hmm.
and you should go up there and meet them. And I said, oh, do you know what? I should, but sure, I didn't have time. And then they wind up in Derry. So there was very strange God incidences in Medjugorje, and at the end of the day, what we were going to do was adoration. Do you know what? And I said that to the bishop. I said, look, I don't know what's going on here. We're not going to do anything controversial. We're going to have no talks or anything. I said to the bishop, just let us do adoration. The bishop said, yeah, go off and do the adoration in the church. And he gave us the blessing. Now, I don't know. That's all I can say. So, and Our Lady has, she asked me to do a prayer group in a shrine here beside me where she allegedly appeared. She said, do a men's prayer group there. And I procrastinated on that. But there was a miracle that happened in that particular shrine. I had put it on my blog. Look, I am going to do a men's prayer group every Tuesday at 8 p.m. and we're going to have rosary scripture and a cup of tea and coffee. So just come along. The week before Joe Biden arrived to the town where I live, just took over the town. It was a Tuesday, and I had planned to go to a Catholic event somewhere else, but because the Secret Service and everything was all around the town, I literally could not pass through the town here in my town. And I was here at home, and I got a phone call and said, we're out here in the shrine, but there's nobody here for the prayer group. And I said, oh, no, I haven't started yet. I said, I'm going to do it every Tuesday, but just follow my videos and you'll get the date. But then I said, look, I'm only 10 minutes away. So I went out and I met them. And there was this young man that had driven 4 hours to meet me across Ireland in that prayer group. And as soon as I walked in, I get a vision of him. He's in Međugorje and he's in confession. I said, wow, this is really strange. But I, didn't want to frighten the poor lad because, what you don't know where he's coming from. And I just met the lad. So I bring him to another men's prayer group that was closer to him. And I said, look, there's another man that does a men's ministry here and he works for the priest. You'd be better off going there for a prayer because I'm further away. 2 weeks later, that prayer group invites him to Medjugorje. And he goes out to Medjugorje and he's walking along the street and Father Leon sees him and click. He said, oh, maybe this man needs confession. He goes over and asks him. The man comes back to Ireland. He says, Robert, you never guessed what happened. This. And I said, I know what happened because I saw it. Yeah. I saw the vision. Yeah. And it was like God needed to give me the vision and then he needed to give me the confirmation. Yeah. And so I can't explain what's going on in Međugorje. And I know people hit out at me, this and that. And I don't know. I can't explain it. It's driving people to confession. It's driving people to... I know in my own life, in the last year, I've gone more to confession. I've gone more to adoration. I know in my own interior, I'm different. I am different. Yeah. And I can't explain it.
I don't think you need to make a pronouncement on whether the visionaries are on anything. I don't think you need to do that. I don't know. I mean, I've never been there, so I can't make a pronouncement on it. I've only heard these really wild stories like you're telling me, right? I know my father had a set of rosary beads since he was 15 years old. And when he went, the links between them they went from silver to gold. And I saw a man who had a very hardened heart come back with a softened heart. And so these things happen. I don't think we need to make a pronouncement on whether the visionaries are lying or anything like that. I don't really care. I do think it's very interesting that these beautiful stories happen there, and there are millions of conversions, and anybody who goes there seems to come back changing their view. If they went with a negative view, they kind of come back, all right, maybe I was a little wrong about it. I've never been there. So I'm just not going to take a hard line stance on something that I don't know enough about. Anthony, you're a visionary.
And again, as I said, maybe they needed an anti Međugorje person, but I had an incredible Međugorje experience a few weeks ago. It was just, I put it up in one of my videos. This couple, they rang me up and said, we're in Knock, it's our local shrine, and are you around? I said, yeah, I was thinking of going to Knock. So anyway, I sat down and talked to them and spoke to them. And as we were leaving, the man said, oh, my mother, she used to be a Protestant, but she converted to Catholicism after going to Medjugorje. And I stopped and I looked at him and I said, this is so strange that I'm meeting you, that you rang me up. I was just reading about your mother 2 days ago. You know, she was a well-known Irish journalist. And I said, how can this be? That same evening, I was driving to my mother's and I walked into a petrol station, a gas station. I was coming through it. And coming out of the gas station, a lady passes me and she looks at me and she moves on. And then the man that I just met that day, the man whose mother I was talking to, he said to me, do you know what's strange, Robert? You've just met my sister as well today. I said, how did I meet your sister? You were off somewhere else and you passed each other. This is really bizarre. That it was like, I'm reading about his mother, then I'm meeting two of their children.
That's strange.
It was really because, you know, this man's daughter, she was on, this is the fruit of Medjugorje. Listen to this. That family, he's got 6 kids or something like this. They were on holidays in Italy and they went into an ordinary mass and the child kneels down for communion. Like, just because they've educated the kids to respect the Eucharist. And in Medjugorje, a lot of people kneel for communion and the priest always give them, you know, reverent way. And the priest slaps her on the cheek, not a tap, a slap. And he said, get up. And, you know, and I just think, hold on a second, what are we doing in the church here?
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing? Guys, our kids are being slapped for reverencing the Eucharist, while the majority of young people don't care about the Eucharist, don't go to Mass. And those that do, we don't even show them the beauty of the Eucharist. I mean, that's an isolated experience, but
look, but yeah, you see that whatever's going on there, people are coming back on fire for the Catholic faith, you know. So I reserve judgment on it. I of course say if the church condemns it, that's not my place to make a judgment on that. I can only tell you that I've never been there, so I'm not going to. I think a lot of times people hear a talk on something from somebody that they respect, and they go, "Well, this priest said this about this, so I have to hold that hardline position." Yes. And it's like, all right, but you know, until I visited it myself, I'm not making a pronouncement on it. You know, what we also were in the green room, we were talking about. Oh, so that's what I was going to get back to. The you were saying the overall consensus around there, though, with the Spanish blogs and stuff, is that they do kind of have the same sentiment, not just the Strickland thing, but it really doesn't seem like a uniquely English thing that they're feeling worried about the direction of the church, right? Like it because they will make you feel like it's just us, but I do think everybody is pretty upset. I know somebody posted the other day that there's even Italian bloggers and YouTubers that are all talking about this stuff, and you see there's a French traditional movement that's kind of emerging. Even when the cathedral, when Notre Dame went on fire, you saw everybody on their knees singing the Ave Maria. I think that they're trying to pigeonhole us, and I was wondering what it looks like from an Irish perspective, what to see the craziness in the American church. Is it a strange phenomenon, or?
I mean, what has happened in American Catholicism is a good thing under Pope Francis, because he has he has filled conservative seminaries. He's actually driving. He's the best Pope you could have had for America, and that seems strange for me to say, but I'm just going to call it out. I mean, Catholics that love the faith, because if we've been formed under two papacies, I'm John Paul II man. You've been formed and you've read all his documents, and he's the person. And then all of a sudden we have Pope Francis, and then he's taking a different approach to things. This is going to cause a certain confusion, a certain challenge to us that love the faith. And we can see this playing through the Spanish world. We see it through Poland. I mean, the Poland, there's definitely a lot of confusion there. And in the Spanish-speaking world, or in the Portuguese-speaking world, There is a blogger. He has 600 and something thousand followers in Brazil, and you know, he's also driving the same type of question. So you know, it's not unique. It's not unique to America, and yeah, we'll see.
I want to address this. That's exactly what I am. I'm on the fence. I mean, you could not find a better term for where I am. I'm on the fence about Međugorje. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. I don't think I have to make a hardline position on it.
And I'm on the fence as well. Like, if it came out tomorrow that it was a complete fraud, well, I would just say, okay, that's that, you know. But don't knock the fruits that are actually there. Like Mary's Meals, that charity alone, Mary's Meals, has fed millions of children around.
Robert, I have 5 siblings because of Međugorje. You have to understand that. My parents came back and my mom said, I'm not going to use birth control anymore because they took that trip, right? So like my 5 younger siblings actually owe their lives to Međugorje, whether it's a real apparition or not. So I'm not going to go out and condemn this apparition that I don't know anything about. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's actually is the perfect explanation is me sitting on the fence about it. So, no, this person, and I understand this person wants us to say, okay, well, the local bishop can, I'm just not going to make a,
to be fair, a bishop kind of in that area of the world also incarnated Rupnik. So let's not pretend that bishops are, you know, perfect here, people.
Yeah. I would just encourage people on Medjugorje just to listen to Father Leon Pereira, because he does go through all of the different objections to it, you know, the money and the condemnations of the bishops and, you know, the various things. And again, you know, at the end of the day, you do not need to believe in apparitions to be Catholic. Private revelation is not part of the deposit of the faith. So all I can say is going to adoration there. And the confession, oh my God, that is, I've never seen anything like that in the Catholic world. Never in my life, the phenomenon of confession. And I'm just saying that.
Just look at this, like not ever coming back. Like, look at how erratic you're reacting. Like, how erratic. Settle down. Nobody, you make it like we're out here telling people to go to Međugorje. I don't know, man. That to me just seems so ridiculous. We're just having
I've met people having conversion in Međugorje coming back and only going to traditional Latin Mass.
Yeah,
so, like, the fruits are there.
Yeah. And I've also seen, like I was just talking about my father. My parents came back with that conversion, and my father doesn't go to Mass now. So maybe the conversion doesn't last. It's a spiritual high. I think that's the biggest danger in the charismatic movement, is that you can go from these chasing these mountaintop experiences and these feelings of a spiritual high. That is something I will absolutely say that is a very dangerous thing about the charismatic movement, is when you're not feeling that spiritual high you're getting at your charismatic Mass or your conference that you're going to, it can be very hard to live through the lows. And there's something very stabilizing about the traditional liturgy that I have found in my own life, is that it helps me to maintain more of a stable faith life of just the traditional prayers that I've been saying now and going to the traditional Mass on Sundays. It has given me this very stable faith where it's not such a mountaintop to a canyon relationship with God.
But this is where proper spiritual formation is needed. You know, to so many Catholics, they don't know the catechism. They don't know how to pray, the stages of prayer, like the stages of sanctification. And, you know, you have a good spiritual director. They will bring you through, okay, how do I move through the spiritual life, what I'm feeling? Because the first rule in the spiritual life, beware of feelings. Because if we only react to our feelings, we're never going to have a spiritual life. You're never you need discipline. You know, it needs to be this ora et labora process. You know, it's age old, and that's what we need to be teaching Catholics today. You know, okay, you've had a conversion, now we have to nourish that, but you have to do it with tradition, with the lives of the saints. You know, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, all of these amazing saints that will teach you, look, this is how you develop your spiritual life. And that requires obedience and humility. And sometimes you won't feel everything or feel not anything, really.
Yeah, I think It's such a divisive topic, Međugorje, right?
It's
Just so
it's just,
you can't even voice any questions about it without getting people to look, the local bishop. I'd rather listen to the local. I get all that. We're just it's just a
yeah, I know.
man.
I know it's divisive. And again, that comment there that I'm never coming back. I used to be that person.
Yeah.
I would say to Medjugorje, the Medjugorje fanatics, I said, you're what happens when that is proven a fraud? I said, will you still be a Catholic? I used to say that to them. And look, all I can say is just, know the faith. And just be prepared for that what if scenario that it is all a scam. How will that impact you? Did you know Christ more? So that's what I'm saying is like, and look, there's real grace in Medjugorje, objective real grace. Those are real priests with sacramental character that give real confession, real Eucharist. So, the church was there before the apparition. Kruževac was there before the apparition. Look, in some way, there is grace working in Medjugorje. Now,
I think that you also have manipulation from certain outside forces trying to swing things in ways also, like you said, those Franciscan priests that came and gave the talk, they all were found to live double lives. I mean, there are major problems with Medjugorje. There absolutely is. There's problems with the visionaries too. I mean, there are major issues there. So we're just, I think that God can write straight with crooked lines is all I was saying before with I don't know about the visionaries. It's like if all these people are being drawn to a place for the impression that Our Lady's appearing there, that doesn't mean God can't use that place for good, even if these individuals are doing something suspicious. I think they're still going there with an open heart, with a disposition to seek God. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's what's required to have. I think that is the one requirement for faith, is that you have to have an open disposition in your heart to have God enter it. God can't force his way in. You have to actually ask to, seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open.
Exactly.
So, Robert, I'm really glad you came out. I was going to switch topics, but after that it's kind of, I know this was last minute, man. I appreciate you coming on with us. Question for Robert. Okay. So, avoiding Babylon, question for Mr. Nugent. Is he a fellow fan of Father Reginald Lagrange, 3 Ages of the Interior Life?
Gary, I actually don't know him, but I have the 3 stages of there's a book that I'm just reading at the moment, which is The Ascent of Man to God, and answering the Vatican II period doctrine of acquiring Christian perfection and the universal call to holiness. So the 3 stages of the spiritual life, the purgative, the contemplative, the illuminative, this path of purification or sanctification, you see it in different saints, and different people have spoken about it over 2,000 years. So I'm very much interested in it, because I really do think this is what we need to be introducing people to today, so that you can navigate how to navigate the spiritual life. And there's a theologian that's coming to the men's conference next weekend, Jean Corrie. He's doing a lot of work specifically on prayer and on the process of sanctification, and educating people on it. So I actually don't know that particular priest, but I've been studying other people. At the end of the day, remember, I'm a dad with kids, with a full-time job and a part-time blog, and I can't read everything. But
that goes for all 3 of us. But I would say none of you should mistake listening to a podcast for a prayer life.
Yes. And do you know what? The real Catholics with a real prayer life are probably not on YouTube at all. I don't listen to any of our discussion.
100%.
Because like if you do have a real, and I say this to men, friends of mine, concentrate on your prayer life, your family, sacraments, nourishing yourself, scripture, that's really what's going to feed you. I suppose these blogs, they may reach out to people that haven't a clue about the faith, and it might be some meager effort of evangelization. I don't know, but you're not going to get sanctified. Let's face it, you're not going to be a saint listening to people on YouTube. You won't.
Well, and if I would say this, we were saying earlier that the shows that have the most views are usually the least beneficial spiritually.
Exactly.
So if you're going to listen to something of ours, go look for the shows with low views. I bet you those are the ones that are the most edifying and that might actually help you.
Actually, no. If there's a channel called With Mary. And it's run by Joe. I did an interview with the English-speaking man that runs the English-speaking side. He gets millions and millions of views just by praying the rosary. So there is, he's not giving any it's just prayer. It's just pure. And he has thousands of views. And there's a French man that does the same. And I was just 700,000 subscribers on the French channel. So look, there are benefits, and Jean Curie's channel, he's just going through the spiritual life. He's not going into the politicization side of the church, but so there is good and there is bad in this thing. But
yeah, I would say, I think I want to say I appreciate Hard Knock Life. Because even though he disagreed with us on that, he's still got a good sense of humor, saying I'm never coming back here. So look, guys, the whole point of this show was you don't have to agree on every little thing. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need somebody can have an opinion on Međugorje you don't agree with, and you don't have to go into meltdown mode and say, I'm never coming back here. That's so crazy. This is not like a pro Međugorje channel or anything. Settle down. I don't know what to tell you, lady, that you got so upset, but it was clearly a woman getting that emotionally erratic.
And we're off the rails. I knew it was going to happen.
Gosh. Only a woman would react like that.
Oh, no.
She's definitely not coming back now.
Listen, she will not get that joke. She will not find it funny. And we're glad that she's not coming back. Anthony, we're pissed off and you need to appease us. Yeah, that's a danger. That is also a danger you have to watch out for. Audience capture, where you don't want to say something that you don't believe just because you think your audience wants to hear it, right? I mean, for you to come out and say I was wrong about Medjugorje, it probably pissed off a lot of people that were following your channel. That's a difficult thing to say I was wrong about, and to touch such a controversial subject that is so divisive.
Yeah, but I challenged Mike Lewis once on something. We were at Loggerheads on a specific thing that he had published, and I viciously attacked. Well, not viciously, but I attacked Mike Lewis on something, and afterwards I found out that he was actually right.
Yeah.
And I had to write him an email and apologize and say, look, Mike, you were right on this, and eat the humble pie. So we do have to be careful, and that's why at the end of the day, remember what is the purpose of what we're doing here for blogging about the faith. It is to bring souls to Christ, to the truth. And so it's not about audience retention. It's about, okay, well, look, we have a faith, the Catechism, the Catholic Church. Let's Magisterium. Let's bring people to understand the faith better, understand prayer better. That's our mission, guys. That's our only mission.
Yeah, and it's good to not it's good to have these conversations where we're not just focusing on the negative. I mean, yeah, we touched on. We're a little worried about, but we didn't focus on a single thing that Francis said. Like, I really don't like those shows. I'm not crazy about those shows when a document gets released that everybody's up in arms about. I like just having these Catholic conversations where you just get another Catholic on and just have a general conversation about the faith, about maybe some of these things that you've experienced. And this is a good way to end the show. So, Robert, really, thank you so much, man.
No problem.
I'm glad that I reached out to you yesterday. This was
a pleasure.
Pretty fun off the fly show. You have anything to promote?
Just the men's adoration next Friday and Saturday in Ireland. Anybody listening in Ireland, 2,000 men. We're calling you to Derry, to St. Columba's Long Tower Church. Dana Everybody knows her in Ireland. Dana is leading us in the rosary and getting us to sing Light the Fire. And so I just want to thank the clergy and bishops that have helped us with this. So just big shout out any Irish men or anybody that wants to fly into Ireland next Saturday 2 to 5. The Irish men's adoration is happening all Ireland, and so we're just looking forward to that.
Everybody remember, Robert said, if you don't visit Medjugorje, you can't go to heaven. He called it Catholic Mecca. It's like...
I apologize for Anthony, everyone. I'm sorry.
We had to get a little laugh at the end. You know that. So, guys, thank you for checking us out. This was a
Michael Lofton is going to cut this. He's going to put that segment. He's going to say, Robert said this. You'll have an edited version.
Oh man, we can at least promise you guys one laugh before the show ends every time we come on. I just came to see Anthony talk about Australian people having PTSD in a desert. So that's a reference to me talking about
the
version
show
of Alone, the show Alone in Australia. But all right, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. It's Saturday. I'm gonna go play with my kids and hang with my family. Robert and Rob are probably gonna go do the same. So thank you for joining us. Please share the shows, man. That's the best way to get these out there,
especially an early morning Saturday show. We need the help.
Yeah, so if you guys can share this on social media, tell your friends about us at Mass, and we will see you guys on Tuesday with Cale Zeldin.